Chapter 667. The third year and second month of the Dark Portal. The earth was still frozen and there were no signs of life waking up. This was the most difficult time of winter. It was still winter but almost all the food was gone. In the northern continent of Rotterdam, corpses of people who had frozen and starved to death could be seen everywhere. Due to the cold weather, there was no need to worry about the plague. However, the hard layer of ice made everyone give up on the idea of burying their companions or neighbors. The nobles of Rotterdam were celebrating the victory of the war in the warm castle. In Stormwind, the southernmost part of the continent, Lang was inspecting his territory with Prince William. Yes, braving the -5°C cold wind and light snow. As there were still remnants of the orcs in the depths of the elven forest, Lang had no choice but to bring more than 500 royal knights with him. Of course, there was no lack of paladins, priests, hunters, mages, and a few rangers from the Windrunner family. As they passed by the graveyard outside Goldshire town, a few frozen corpses jumped into Lang and William's sight. What's going on? Anduin, who was inspecting with Lang, felt a fire burning in his chest. Before he could get angry, his followers naturally summoned the terrified mayor of Goldshire town. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. We didn't know you were coming." "Didn't know? Does that give you enough time to hide the body?" King Leon's words were laced with daggers, which made him look even more majestic. "It's not like that, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please take a closer look. Most of them are elderly." The mayor, who was so scared that he wet his pants, tried to explain. Lang took a look and found that it was indeed so. Before they came back to the elven forest, their bodies were not in good condition. Everyone advised them not to come back, but they stubbornly said that they wanted to die in their hometown. During the week of turbulence on the ship, we tried our best to take care of them. According to Sir Marcus's instructions, we kept them near the doctor or the priest. Unfortunately, they didn't make it. The mayor's explanation made Lang and the rest fall silent. Hometown had a special and sacred meaning to every citizen of Stormwind. Since the founding of the kingdom, thousands of years had passed, and many people had never left their homeland. During the days when Stormwind had fallen, even Lang himself had painfully wondered if he would ever have the chance to return to Stormwind, the land that had been passed down for generations. In the days after the fall, perhaps he and his people were eager to restore their country. What if he died in battle, and all the warriors who were determined to restore the country died in battle? What if it dragged on for 5 or 10 years and they still couldn't recover their country? By that time, how many people would be willing to support the restoration of Stormwind? Lang, Anduin, and even the young William could clearly understand the desire of the citizens, especially the elderly citizens, to return to their hometown. Lang sighed. In the cold winter weather, his sigh formed an icy mist that was incomparably clear. "Mr. Mayor, I accept your explanation. However, please take us to the place where the civilians gather. I will use my eyes to witness the results of your work and your loyalty to the kingdom and its people." Of course. The mayor wiped the beads of sweat that had started to form on his face, and hurriedly led Lang and the rest into the town. As Goldshire town had once been the base of the Horde's attack on Stormwind City, and had been burned down by Duque, many of the trees still looked bare even after more than a year had passed. They were either dead or had yet to grow back. In the slightly deserted town, Lang was pleased to see many human-style houses standing tall in the town. A year and a half ago, the same place had been filled with the disgusting, dirty, and messy tents of the Horde. "Father, many of the houses here look the same," Prince William exclaimed in surprise. Lang was also very surprised. As the king, he had only seen reports from Duque about how many houses had been built. Regarding internal affairs reports, Lang had always looked at them with a watery eye. In Lang's impression, if a tenth of the houses could be built, it would be good if the rest of the people could have a sturdier tent. Now, it seemed that Duque's report was completely true, without a single bit of watery information. Thanks to Grand Duke Marcus' new building manual, we were able to build a winter house for every household in the town before winter came, a total of 1,120 households. As long as there is a man in the family, even if he doesn't know how to build a house, under the guidance of a craftsman, a sturdy house can be built by 5 or 6 people in a month. Lang, Anduin, and William were all shocked. They knew nothing about building houses, but they had seen how carpenters and stonemasons built houses in the past. It was impossible to build a house in less than half a year. What kind of efficiency was this now? The mayor first brought the king and the rest to the warehouse. Many pieces of wood were stacked neatly in the warehouse. Lang noticed that there were grooves on both ends of each piece of wood. "This is," the mayor said, I don't know the specifics. Mr. Van Cleve from the Brotherhood of Stonemasons explained a lot to me. He said that as long as the pillars and beams marked with a specific number are placed at a specific location on the flat ground, they can be directly lapped up, and the nails on top can be used to make the frame of the house. The house will not fall apart easily. Then, a double layer of wooden planks is prepared in advance and a house is basically built. That's it? Anduin was stunned. There's no way to use the stove for heating. This can only be built by the more idle women. Bring me to have a look, Lang ordered. After walking for a short while, the group arrived at a commoner's house at the edge of the town. They knocked on the door of the house, and the farmer welcomed the king and the rest in a panic. You don't have to kneel, stand and talk. In this era of strict hierarchy, it was a great blessing for the commoners to not have to kneel when they saw the king. They would not dare to sit together with the king even if they were beaten to death. Thank you, your majesty, the man said in unison with his wife and 3 half-grown children. Are you a soldier on leave? Anduin noticed the man's necklace. There was a rectangular plate on the necklace, which was the idea that Duque had come up with, the military plate. The military plate was marked with the soldier's name, place of origin, affiliation, and meritorious service. The man immediately stood at attention in a standard military posture. Captain Joseph Adams of the 5th Squad of the 3rd Brigade of the Kingdom's 5th Infantry Regiment salutes you, Commander Lothar. How was the winter? Lang asked with a smile. Thank you, Saint Duque, we had a good time. Joseph's face changed almost as soon as he finished speaking. Saint Duque? Chapter 668. The mayor's face turned ghastly pale. Even if Leon had the reputation of being a wise king, who could guarantee that Leon wouldn't be jealous and resentful? How could he judge a subject as a saint in front of a king? That was a huge taboo. If it was in the past, no one would sigh for them even if they hung all the gossipers in the town on the spot. The mayor already wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. Unexpectedly, King Leon raised his hand and raised his left palm, gesturing for them to stop. He did not care about Joseph, who had already knelt down in fear, nor did he care about the trembling mayor. Instead, he turned to Prince William and said, Child, today I want to teach you the way of a king. Father, please speak. I'm listening. The little prince nodded seriously. To be a wise king, the first thing you have to do is never be jealous of a minister who is more talented than you. When it comes to war, I am far inferior to your uncle Anduin. He is the god of war in the hearts of the soldiers. I'm not. When it comes to strategizing and internal affairs, I can't even learn a little bit about your brother Duque. I only know that under his management, my people are living a better life. Lang shrugged his shoulders and pursed his lips, making a funny expression. All right, if I was the kind of stupid king who couldn't bear to see his minister become a saint, should I behead Anduin and hang Duque, and then let the people send me to the stake? Oh no. Before the people do anything, the women from the Windrunner family will first skin me alive. Oh, that's too bad. I might as well die in Storm Fortress. After hearing Ryan's words, Anduin, the ministers, and even the guards of the Wang family were all affected by Ryan's mischievous antics, and they all smiled in relief. They all knew Lang very well. This was a king who might not be the most capable, but his character was absolutely noble. You must absolutely trust the ministers who are good to the people, understand? For example, your uncle Anduin and brother Duque. William's eyes were filled with admiration. I understand now. Lang's behavior made the mayor and Joseph's family let go of their grudges, and they also opened up a chatterbox. Through their mouths, Lang truly understood how effective Duque's policy was. Since there was no need for war for the time being, Duque asked Lothar to order the army to take a break. More than 70% of the soldiers were given a break and were able to return to their hometown to participate in the reconstruction. There were only 2 requirements for these soldiers. First, they had to report back to the army after the spring plowing next year. Otherwise, they would be treated as deserters. Second, they had to wear their military tags when working in their hometown. This was to let everyone know that the kingdom had sent them back to help. With the return of a large number of able-bodied men, the reconstruction work was able to speed up. At the same time, due to the bountiful harvest of food in the western wilderness, the people did not have to worry about starving that winter. If that was all, Duque's name would not be sacred in the hearts of the people. Perhaps the story of Duque's bravery in fighting Nisario was something that people in a country that worshipped martial arts relished. But for most commoners, it was just a topic of conversation after a meal. The only thing that could really make them smile happily was a stable and happy life. Originally, everyone had already prepared for the worst. In history there had never been a great migration without a large number of deaths. The weak, old, women and children would die of hunger, cold, or disease in the shortest time possible. However, as a transmigrator, Duque used his modern conventional medical knowledge to reverse all of this. The cement road that ran through the entire elven forest from east to west provided the most solid foundation for the transportation of supplies. Long before the recovery of Stormwind, Duque had Edwin Van Cleve and Jirian Stallman prepare everything. Duque had perfectly considered every aspect of clothing, food, housing, and transportation. The first was winter clothing. There was cotton in Azeroth, and it had been set up early in the western wilderness. It allowed the Dark Portal to harvest 200,000 kilograms of cotton in the autumn of Stormwind in the second year of the Dark Portal. This was not an ideal number, but it could allow most women and children to live a relatively warm winter. The people of Azeroth still mainly wore linen clothes. In the past, they had to rely on the fire to warm themselves in the winter. When had they ever worn such warm clothes? Every person who put on a cotton-padded coat was full of praise for this new winter clothing that they called Duque's cotton-padded coat. In terms of food, in addition to the basic black bread, Duque also added a large amount of meat. The small fishing boats that could not travel long distances were sent out early in the morning. With the help of the mare people, there was a constant catch even in winter. The high-fat whale meat and various fish were already ice cubes when they were sent ashore. Although it was a little heavy, it was better to keep them fresh. It could be transported from Stormwind Port to the East Elven Forest hundreds of kilometers away. People could add a delicious meal for their families at an extremely low price. During the Great Retreat, the people had lost almost all their belongings. Duque could not always distribute profits because this would breed corruption and laziness. Therefore, Duque's solution was to provide relief through work. They were paid to build houses for their neighbors. They were paid to transport food and cotton-padded clothes for the village. Chapter 669. At the same time, there were many cases of people freezing to death all over Lordaeron. Apart from the Tirisful Forest and the holy city of Stratholme, most of Lordaeron's territory had been ravaged by the orcs. The Silverpine Forest had been burnt to a crisp by the flame tactics. The eastern region, later known as the Eastern and Western Plaguelands, had been ravaged by the orcs before they attacked Cuel Salis. Almost no town was left unscathed. The people could only gather in their dilapidated houses and shiver in fear. According to the latest statistics, there were at least 100,000 people who had died this winter. Upon hearing this news, King Salas of Stormguard suddenly felt extremely lucky. He had also heard of Duque's method of building houses, but the unprepared people of Stormguard had no way of using it. Duque gave him a suggestion, forbidding the people from returning to the earthy highlands before spring. A large number of people were settled in the former Stormwind refugee camp in the Hillsbrad Hills. There, at least, they had almost perfect living conditions and stored food that could not be carried away by Stormwind. Although it was said to be stored food, it was actually the food that the Barra family had hidden in a secret place over the years. The Barra family was forced to leave their territory by Tarinas, but there were many things that could not be taken away. Since the Barra family was determined to follow Duque, the right to dispose of the food naturally fell into Duque's hands. Duque did them a favor and gave it to the people of Stormguard. Looking towards the south from South Shore, King Salas's cloak fluttered in the cold wind. He suddenly shouted, "Duque, we, the people of Stormguard, will remember this favor forever. Not for generations to come." Behind him, hundreds and thousands of warriors of Stormguard shouted in unison, "Forever in our hearts, not for generations to come." On the 15th of February, standing on the peak of the Redridge Mountains, Lang suddenly asked, "Say, what is Duque doing now?" "Teaching students. I heard he made the little princess of Cuel Tira's vomit." Anduin shrugged. "So fast?" Not only Lang, but the ministers around him were also burning with curiosity. "No, it's because it's the first time I've seen blood," Anduin corrected. "Of course you'll see blood the first time." Lang had an expression that said, "We understand." Only the young Prince William was dumbfounded. He looked left and right, not knowing what these mysterious adults were talking about. "It's not what you think." Anduin realized that he had inadvertently made things worse. His face turned green and he had no choice but to roar, "Go and find out for yourselves. I'm not going to bother about this." This time, Lang and the ministers were dumbfounded. "Duque, what the hell are you doing?" The Dark Portal 3, February 14th. A certain otaku with the surname Du, who had never even touched a girl's hand back then, swore to use his power to name February 14th every year as Lover's Death Day. Later, because a certain man had successfully won over the Windrunner sisters, he shamelessly used his power to bluff King Lang in January. Oh Lang. I always felt that the Stormwind population loss was too great. To nurture a qualified soldier, we must first have a qualified young man. It will take at least 16 years for a baby to grow into an adult warrior. You mean to encourage childbirth? The ministers discussed it with me before, but didn't you say that the country could not provide more money to encourage childbirth? No, we don't need money. We can set February 14th as Valentine's Day. Apart from the soldiers on duty, all soldiers can have a day off. Why Valentine's Day? Lang was curious. In order to fight against the evil orc invaders, countless good men rushed to the battlefield without leaving a single man or woman behind. Many of them shed their blood on the battlefield, unable to return home to reunite with their beloved girls. Don't you think it's a great tragedy? Seeing Duque put one hand on his chest and the other stretched out like a bard reciting a poem, the corner of Lang's eye twitched. In order to deal with the tribe, this can't be helped. Yes. But at the end of the war, don't you think we should compensate our warriors well? At least 30% of our soldiers have to stay in the barracks or go out on patrol for the entire winter. You know, we have to maintain at least 100,000 standing soldiers for a long time in the future. Think about it, tens of thousands of soldiers have been holding back for the entire winter, and then suddenly announce that they can go home to reunite with their loved ones. What would happen? The evil Duque smirked. Well, that image was too beautiful. Oh, it was too painful for the eyes. Lang, who had always been serious, could not help but facepalm. However, this era did not have the three gods of death on Earth, Durex, Okamoto, and Jasper. These three gods of death had prevented billions of humans from being born. There had long been statistics on Earth. Starting from February, after 10 months, the number of babies born in December was the highest. Lang smiled bitterly and turned to look at Anduin, who was also rubbing his eyebrows. What do you think? Lothar could only answer with a bitter smile. In terms of military discipline, it's terrible, but in the long run, it's beneficial to the country, so I can only agree. Anyway, those brats down there will definitely cheer. Hence, on the 25th of January, Stormwind officially announced that the 14th of February would be Valentine's Day in the kingdom. There would be a total of 3 days before and after that, and the soldiers could have a holiday in advance or later. It was so that the brave soldiers could reunite with their loved ones after going through tough training and battles. In this era, professional soldiers had very few days off, and there were no fixed holidays. Most of them had served for more than 15 years. In ancient Rome on Earth, professional soldiers had to serve for 25 years before they could retire. Before Stormwind, more than a third of the men were sent to the army for the sake of the war. Although the war was basically over, most of the soldiers had signed an oath with the kingdom to serve as soldiers. Now that the announcement was made without any warning, the whole country cheered. Jaina arrived in Stormwind by ship on the 15th of January. On the surface, it was to become Lin Li's disciple, but in fact, Dai Lin had asked Jaina to come over with the intention of marrying off his daughter. Just the accompanying goods and servants alone took up 3 large ships, and there was also a team of 200 elite guards. Yes, there were also a few ceremonial officers. If anything really happened, the wedding would be held immediately. Duque protested sternly, saying that it was not becoming Lin Li's disciple, but selling his daughter. The 2 old foxes, Dai Lin and Lang, ignored him and had a tacit understanding. On the 1st of February, a convoy of 80 carriages arrived in Karazhan along the newly built cement road. 2 weeks later, it was the official Valentine's Day of Stormwind. 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Sitting in the newly renovated reception hall in Karazhan, Jaina was wearing a well-tailored mage robe. She felt that something special would happen today. Although she had been left hanging for 2 weeks after arriving, the official announcement that Khadgar gave her today was that Duque was giving her her first lesson. Chapter 670. What was Valentine's Day? 13 or 14-year-old girls were at the age where they loved to dream the most. Prince Arthas was not bad, but that was all. Arthas, who had yet to officially step onto the stage of the Alliance, was compared to the legendary Saint Duque, who was deified by the people. Well, although the two were only 4 years apart in age, Arthas was doomed to be outclassed. The princesses of this era were pitiful. How to find a husband was a common problem for all kings who had princesses. Those who were high would be looked down upon by their own people. It was not easy to be on the same level as them, as people would always associate them with usurping the throne. In the past 1,000 years, 70% of princesses had to be exported and sold domestically. The remaining 30% either grew old alone, or eloped with a groom or a knight, and were then mercilessly destroyed by the king. Only 1 out of 100 were successfully married off. Jaina had worried whether she would be forced to abandon her magic talent, because a queen who knew magic would always be easily associated with witches. Duque was ideal. Duque, who was a radiant moon archmage, would not restrict her in any way on the path of magic. And Duque's exaggerated status was comparable to a kingdom's fiefdom and uncrowned king, so Jaina did not feel that she was marrying down. Although she did not know why she went there as a disciple, seeing how her father looked like he was marrying off his daughter, and after receiving enough courtesy from Lang in Stormwind City, she had many guesses about Duque, many of which were unrealistic. It could not be helped. Who told the two kings to reach a consensus while Duque was determined to resist? All kinds of wonderful misunderstandings arose. From the looks of it, Gianna was tricked. She arrived in Karazhan and was left hanging for 2 weeks. Fortunately, she was not grounded, and her best friend Elugia accompanied her for these 2 weeks. The two met in Dalajan, and their similar statuses made them naturally close friends. Although she was surprised that Elugia took a big detour to become a countess under Duque, the revival of her close friend's family still made Jaina very happy. "When can I see Teacher Duque?" "The Grand Duke is very busy. The heavy responsibility of rebuilding the kingdom fell on his shoulders. It couldn't be helped. Most of the nobles with the ability to manage had perished in that shipwreck. Furthermore, the task of supplying the army of the blasted lands also falls on the Grand Duke." Elugia lied patiently. He was right. Elugia could not explain the almost natural resistance that Duque had towards Jaina. Duque had instructed Jaina before she arrived, "I don't want to marry Gianna. Elugia, you and Jaina are good friends, right? Then hang her out for 2 weeks. As long as she doesn't leave my fief, you can take her anywhere you want." Moreover, at that time, Duque was hugging her waist and whispering in her ear. This was simply asking her to set up her best friend. However, Duque's declaration that he didn't want to marry Jaina warmed her heart. Whether it was logically her vassal should first pledge her loyalty to the Grand Duke, or the relationship between the two of them almost broke through the last hurdle, both drove her to help Duque set up Jaina. In the end, even though she knew that Duque was actually teaching Ronin in the depths of Karazhan's library, Elugia stubbornly said that she did not know. Then she took Jaina and a group of followers to stroll around the East Elven forest. However, after witnessing a series of miraculous policies that Duque had used to help the people survive the cold winter, Jaina's impression of Duque had increased. He's not only a powerful mage and an extraordinary commander, he's also a great ruler. The young princess did not hide her admiration for Duque. Elugia held her forehead and sighed in her heart, "I'm just following your orders. I don't care what happens next." On the night of the 13th of February, when the Einherjar mage Khadgar came to inform Jaina, Jaina was pleasantly surprised and a little anxious. She had a feeling that this new Valentine's Day was very likely prepared for her. However, Khadgar repeatedly emphasized that the first lesson tomorrow was practical magic, which made Jaina very confused. "Isn't tomorrow the new Valentine's Day, set by Stormwind?" Jaina tried to get more information from Khadgar. Khadgar shrugged, "So what if it is? I'm only responsible for informing you." "Mr. Khadgar, do you have any suggestions for me?" Even though the intelligent Jaina did not know how to bribe a ghost, she still tried her best. "All right, I can only tell you that Master Marcus has never been an academic mage." With that, Khadgar bowed and left the room. Jaina was in a dilemma. She had no idea what to prepare for the next day. The Jordan magic staff was a must. There was a large magic crystal on the tip of the staff and 4 small crystals revolving around it. As an earth mage, it was currently the best staff she could use. What troubled her was what kind of magic robe to wear. Jaina almost subconsciously picked up the insight magic robe. The moment she picked it up, her pretty face turned red. After trying it on, Jaina made a sexy S-shaped pose in front of herself in the mirror. She was immediately defeated by herself. "It's too embarrassing." It was a dress, but the upper body only had a gold-embroidered bra, and a golden belt covered the belly button from the center of the chest all the way to the waistline. Apart from that, there was nothing else on her upper body. Her slender waist and smooth back were completely exposed to the air. Her lower body seemed more proper, but upon closer inspection, there were long openings on both sides of her thighs. Not only were her thighs completely exposed to the air, but as long as she walked a little wider, there was a chance that her breasts would be exposed. After changing no less than 10 robes on the 14th of February, Jaina finally appeared in front of Duque wearing a pure white, moon cloth robe, embellished with sapphires. The robe looked very dignified and elegant, but the exposed shoulders, accompanied by the brilliant golden hair scattered on the white robe, still showed off the unique beauty of a young girl. Fortunately, she changed. Otherwise, if she really wore the Insight Magic robe, Duque might really practice what it meant to make a profit every 3 years and never lose money. In the gorgeous Karazhan library, the moment Jaina saw Duque, her heart jumped violently. She was scared because she saw the scimitar that her father gave him at Duque's waist. Very good. Today's first lesson, I want you to know that the identity of a princess is meaningless. Chapter 671. Shock and unease froze on Jaina's beautiful face. Just from Duque's aura and gaze, Jaina knew that the person standing in front of her was her teacher, not her husband, Duque. What the hell? Duque is for real. It was not that Jaina did not think that Duque would be for real, but in her estimation the probability was less than 1%. Even though she knew that her beauty was not necessarily better than Duque's rumored lovers, the Windrunner sisters. However, Jaina, who grew up in a royal family and was influenced by the nobility, still believed that she would be Duque's only choice in marriage. Now it seemed that she was wrong. She did not know why Duque looked at her with such resistance. She did not know if it was her fault or something else. Anyway, at this moment, Duque had completely put himself in the role of a strict teacher. Her identity as a princess was meaningless? Jaina almost wanted to refute Duque on the spot. However, she recalled the recent battle at the Dark Portal. Alterac had been destroyed, Silvermoon City had almost been taken over, and Stormwind and Stormguard had been destroyed. They had only managed to revive their countries. Jaina immediately understood what Duque meant. If there was no country behind her, then the so-called princess was just a meaningless princess of a destroyed country. Jaina's expression froze. Duque was right. Since ancient times there was no kinship in the royal family, and the road to kingship was always filled with cruelty. Others only saw the glory of being a princess, but who would know her bitterness and helplessness if they were not at her level? Someone as smart as she already knew that her seemingly perfect marriage was actually because she was expelled from the core of Kultiraz's power. Jaina fell silent, and for a moment she had the thought of retreating. Since ancient times all the princesses of the 7 kingdoms had married outside, and all of them had died of depression. If she returned to Kultiraz? No. If she really went back, even if she had to find a plausible reason, to Kultiraz she would be a disgrace. Just look at Princess Kalia. Fortunately she was killed. Otherwise, the fact that she was once the fiancée of Deathwing was enough to make King Tyrreenas want to ban her for life. Yes, if she returned, Kultiraz would not protect her. Although she was very talented in magic and had great potential, she was still far from Duque, who stood at the peak of the alliance and was destined to become a Breaking Dawn mage. After thinking for a while, Jaina immediately made a decision. With the staff in hand, Jaina bowed respectfully. Teacher Marcus, my surname is meaningless. In front of you is only Jaina, who came to learn the mysteries of magic. It was a perfect and flawless answer. Duque narrowed his eyes. He could not help but sigh at the astonishing inertia of history. Jaina's intelligence and talent were indeed astonishing. In just 3 seconds she had realized the situation she was in and quickly found her position. Duque used the identity of Dai Lin's teacher to suppress Jaina, and in the blink of an eye, Jaina became a student. From the look in her eyes, she had already made up her mind to learn magic to protect herself first. Damn it, she was only 13 years old. As for Ronan, who had experienced many battles but lacked knowledge, Duque could let her soar in the sea of knowledge in the Karazhan Grand Library. As for Jaina, Duque decided to educate her in a way that could very likely change the course of her life. Alright, since you understand, I won't emphasize it anymore. Duque raised his face. I'm different from Great Wizard Antonidas. Strictly speaking, he belongs to the academic faction, but I think I'm a classic example of a practical one. I've improved more than 100 spells, all of which were adjusted in actual combat. The number of beastmen that died by my hands is also in the 5 digits. Duque was not making things up. At this point he had already mastered countless metamagic abilities. However, not every metamagic ability was suitable for him and not all the time. For example, the abilities that increased mana consumption to increase the power of spells. In the past, when his mana was low and his mana recovery was too slow, he had to use them according to the situation. Now that he had advanced to Radiant Moon, he could use them whenever he wanted. The system was adjusting Duque's spells all the time. This was how there was Duque, who was invincible in group attacks on the battlefield. After killing a lot, there would naturally be a murderous aura. It wasn't that there had to be vengeful spirits haunting that person, but it was a kind of indifference to life, even cruelty. Duque just stood there, and under the pressure of his aura, Jaina couldn't help but take half a step back. And Duque took a big step forward, his heavy footsteps weakening the pride in Jaina's heart. Duque suddenly asked, "Actually, His Majesty Rin doesn't mind me being made a king. Do you know why I didn't?" Jaina found that she actually didn't dare to breathe. "I don't know. The Burning Legion has already begun to move against the world of Azeroth. From Sargeras controlling Medivh to open the Dark Portal, to kill Jaden's deputy attacking Karazhan not long ago. In just 3 years, the world of Azeroth has experienced 2 major crises of destruction." Jaina hugged her Jordan's staff, and couldn't help but nod. "I have foreseen that the evil power that transcends the mortal world will descend rapidly. In the face of the terrifying power of the demons, worldly power is meaningless. So what if it's as powerful as Rotterdam? Maybe within 10 years Rotterdam will become history, and the great Rotterdam will also become a ruin." When Duque said this, Jaina shivered and she had goosebumps. She really couldn't imagine the destruction of the beautiful Rotterdam. She really wanted to refute Duque and say that it was a ridiculous rumor. However, Stormwind City had fallen, Torrential Fortress and Broken Ridge had been destroyed. Even the Rotterdam Palace had been demolished by the wings of death. This was unimaginable 100 years ago, no, even 5 years ago. Jaina could only nod. Fraud Du continued, "The only thing that can protect the world of Azeroth from the hands of the demons is the same power that transcends the mortal world. The one who can give you a sense of security is not a man, not a powerful Grand Duke, nor a prince of a big country. Remember, the only thing in your hands is magic." Jaina was extremely surprised. Even now, she couldn't believe that this was said by the person who was supposed to be her husband. However, she had to admit that if even the kingdom couldn't be trusted, then only magic could save her. At this time, Duque suddenly grabbed Jaina's wrist, and a strange magic wrapped around both of them. Teleportation? When Jaina recovered from the dizziness of the long-distance teleportation, she was shocked to find herself in a world of ice and snow. Chapter 672. Whoosh! It's so cold. The biting cold wind made Jaina shiver. Even though she was a mage who specialized in ice magic, she couldn't help but shiver when she suddenly came from the warm Karazhan living room to the cold north. She was wearing very little. It was mid-February and the harsh winter had yet to recede. The mountains and trees in the distance were all covered in white. Apart from the mountains there were only trees. For Jaina, who had no experience in surviving in the wild, it was like she was at a loss. Jaina was a little confused. Where was this? At this time, Duque's voice sounded in Jaina's ear. This gave Jaina a shock. At the same time, the sleeveless design of the mooncloth robe was a trap for Jaina. She couldn't help but almost instinctively hug her other arm and rub it hard. This is the northern mountainous area of the Tirisful woodland. Duque's blue and white mage robe fluttered in the cold wind. The Tirisful woodland? The clever Jaina suddenly thought of something, and her little face instantly turned pale. Yes. The first lesson I'm giving you is survival. How to survive in this world that will soon become incomparably terrible. The requirements for the first lesson are not high. With your current equipment, you can survive in the Tirisful woodland infested with orcs for 24 hours. What? When Jaina heard this, she almost cried out in grievance. Letting a little girl like her, who had never lived independently, stay in the dangerous forest of orcs for 24 hours without winter clothes, food, assistance, or any heating equipment. Wasn't this bullying? Tears quickly gathered in the corner of Jaina's beautiful eyes. That pitiful appearance, for a moment, almost made Duque's heart soften. But the best actor was still the best actor. Duque pretended to be magnanimous and asked, "Are you afraid?" Yes. Jaina suddenly looked up, and a hint of surprise flashed in her wronged eyes. So Duque was just giving me a show of strength to scare me. Duque waved his hand, and after a short incantation, an illusory portal as tall as a person opened. Just as Jaina was about to step in, her body suddenly froze as if she had been hit by a petrifying spell. Jaina would recognize this scene even if she turned into ashes. On the other side of the door was Kul Tiras. "As long as you promise to tell His Majesty Proudmoore that you don't want to learn from me, then you can walk through this door, return to your warm home and be your Princess Tiras." Duque spoke very slowly, but each word was like a knife that cut into Jaina's heart. It wasn't that no one had reminded Jaina that Duque didn't like her and didn't want to marry her. He didn't even want to take her as his disciple. However, the smoke glove, that even Antonidas was envious of, made the young Jaina forget about it in her excitement. Now it seemed that it was true. That's right, I can go back, but what about after I go back? He came under Duque's command in the name of becoming his disciple, but he was chased away because he couldn't endure the tough training. It would be strange if her father didn't skin her alive for this kind of humiliation. In the future, let alone Antonida's, no archmage in Dalagen would accept her as a disciple. Thinking of this, Jaina's mouth was full of bitterness. Did she have a choice? Jaina bowed impeccably and used a respectful tone. No, Teacher Marcus, I am your student. I came to Karazhan to receive your teachings. If you think that survival in the wild is very helpful for my growth, then I accept your trial. 24 hours, right? I hope you can come and pick me up on time. I promise to be on time in 24 hours. Duque raised his chin. One more question. Ask. What if there's a danger that I can't handle? Do you remember your brother Drake's coming-of-age ceremony when he was 16? Your father only gave him a dagger and pushed him into a pool with an adult shark. Jaina had goosebumps. When she was a child, she grew up listening to the great achievements of her father and brother. Only when she was a little older did she understand how dangerous it was. In the face of a shark's attack in the sea, the only way to survive was to use the dagger to stab the shark's nose the moment the shark pounced, then use the dagger to twist the shark's head so that the body could escape the shark's bite range. Otherwise, if the shark's sharp teeth grazed the body, the skin would be torn open on the spot, and the wound might even get infected and die. Jaina's whole body was trembling, but after a few seconds she finally calmed down and bowed again. I understand, teacher. May I ask one last question? Yes. Did you experience something similar back then? Yes. Then I have no problem. What you can do back then I can also do. Jaina's blue eyes flashed with determination. Very good. Duke said and disappeared in front of her with a teleportation. It's so cold. Jaina exhaled a mouthful of white fog and realized that she had to find some clothes first. Otherwise she would freeze to death in less than an hour, not to mention 24 hours. The only good thing was that she was wearing standard-made shoes today and not high heels for banquets. At least when faced with bad mountain roads, she would not be so desperate that she had to take off her shoes to walk. In a cave on the mountainside 500 meters away, looking at the dazed Jaina in the snow, a beautiful elf combed her golden hair that had been messed up by the wind. She turned back and smiled. Duque, you're really cruel. You think so too? Aurelia. Aurelia laughed. This is too cruel for a 14-year-old girl. Don't you know? Today is her birthday. Jaina's birthday is Valentine's Day? What the hell is this? Duque really did not know if this was how it was in the original history, or if it was because he had transmigrated that he had become like this. Alright, she could hate if she wanted to. It was better than her following the original trajectory of becoming a girl who sold her father. Duque pulled Aurelia into his arms, feeling the female elf's warmth. Jaina is undoubtedly a true genius. She has the talent to grow to become a Breaking Dawn wizard. But there is no lack of geniuses in this world, and only 1 in 10,000 can reach the peak in the end. The female elf's eyes flickered. Because geniuses all die from their own pride, laziness, or misfortune on the path of growth? Yes. That's not right either. I just don't want her to become that terrible woman who sold her father and the Alliance. Below, Jaina turned in a daze in the cold wind. Suddenly she was pleasantly surprised to see smoke. The rising smoke could be seen clearly even from several kilometers away. Chapter 673. Someone's there. Looking at the rising smoke drifting into the distance, Jaina's heart was ignited with a raging flame of hope. That's her life-saving straw. The moon cloth was very tough, and Jaina could not tear it to make herself more agile. She could only pull the hem of the robe that was almost touching the ground to her thighs. Because she did not know how to tie a knot, she could only hold the staff in one hand and the robe in the other as she hastened her pace. The cold wind seeped into the robe and Jaina felt even colder. Bastard Duque. Bastard Duque. How dare you treat me like this? It's fine if you don't want to marry me, but if you do, I swear I will take revenge on you. However, no matter how much she cursed in her heart, it was useless. In the winter forest, there was nothing but silence. There were no insects, no birds chirping. Other than the sound of the wind that sounded like the wailing of ghosts, there was no other sound. At first, Jaina was still wondering if she should move forward cautiously, but the cold wind was like a whip lashing at her back and her exposed arms. If she did not rub herself, a thin layer of frost would form on her arms in just 2 minutes. Jaina ran wildly in the rugged forest. Because she was not agile enough, she fell down no less than 5 times. However, her instinct to survive was urging her to continue running. Closer. Closer. It was getting closer. She saw the smoke drifting into the distance, getting thicker and thicker. What a big fire. Is this a bonfire party? But it's broad daylight now. Jaina could already see the road. It was a forest path that the villagers had walked for countless years. Although it was not comparable to the Dalajan's perfect fancy tiles, nor could it compare to the so-called cement road that traversed the entire elven forest, it was many times better than the bumpy forest filled with tree roots and gravel. Finally out of the forest, the view in front of her suddenly opened up. Hello? Is anyone here? Yes. Jaina immediately covered her mouth with her empty left hand, and tears of panic flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. Someone. But they were all dead people. In front of Jaina was a hellish scene. This was obviously a village that had been attacked not long ago. Because it was winter and the wind was against the wind, Jaina couldn't smell the stench of rotting corpses. But now her vision, smell, taste, hearing and skin were all at the same time, giving her a shock that exceeded her psychological limits. The burning house still had embers that had not been extinguished, and black smoke billowed out of it. The gate that had been forcefully smashed through was a huge human figure. There were also some scattered food on the ground. It was a mess everywhere. Because of the ice and snow, every corpse maintained the appearance they had when they died. Their fear, anger, and unwillingness before death were all frozen on their faces. There was still a small piece of green skin in the loyal domestic dog's mouth, but the rest of the body below the head had been eaten clean by the battle wolf. The old man who raised his pitchfork to protect his old boss had his head crushed. The father, who had clearly been chopped in half, used the last of his strength to reach out and grab his wife and son. The mother who was hugging her child had half her body smashed by a heavy weapon. A baby who had been gnawed by an ogre until it no longer looked like a human. These were all done by the orcs. Jaina saw an orc corpse covered in wounds. Beside the corpse were 7 or 8 fallen militia. It seemed that this was the only achievement of the village's militia. The lack of food forced the warsong orcs hiding in the depths of the forest of Tirisful to attack the human settlements in the forest. She could no longer control herself. Blurg, blurg. The bread, pastries and fragrant milk that she had eaten early in the morning were all vomited out by Jaina. For the first time in her life, Jaina felt so uncomfortable. The churning feeling in her stomach made her feel like she was going to vomit last night's dinner. After vomiting for a while, until her stomach was empty, until she felt the coldness of death again, Jaina realized that if she did not do something, she would very likely become a cold corpse like them. I have to do something, Jaina told herself. Resisting the nausea and discomfort, Jaina stood up and forced herself to enter this shiraba to find anything that could help her survive. The orcs took almost everything that could be eaten. They rudely broke into every room and smashed open the basement of every house. Because of their huge size, they burst every door, turning every house into ruins full of holes. Fortunately, Gianna found 2 thick blankets in a cupboard under the stairs, and then under one of the beds she found 2 hunks of brown bread that she had never looked at before. She did not know how to make a living with flint, but fortunately she was a qualified earth mage. She came to a messy basement, piled up the wooden blocks and started a fire with a fireball spell. Then she put a blanket under it and wrapped herself in it. It was a little warmer this way. After an unknown amount of time, she could no longer hold back her hunger. Finally, she boiled snow water in an iron pot and cracked open the black bread. After soaking it in the water, she forced herself to swallow it. She would probably never forget the terrible taste for the rest of her life. In a daze, she fell asleep. She was woken up by the noise. Is anyone here? Is anyone still alive? The standard Lordaeran accent was not something the orcs could imitate. Jaina rushed out of the cellar in surprise and saw a group of Lordaeran cavalry. Praise the holy light. The leader was obviously a holy knight. He had already given up hope for this destroyed town. He did not expect to find a survivor, and it seemed like it was the first noble lady. Oh, thank you, Ancestor Soradin. Jaina was also very excited. She had long forgotten about surviving for 24 hours. How did you? Before she could greet him, Jaina suddenly heard a strange, small sound. Whoosh, less than half a meter in front of Jaina. A cavalry beside her was shot in the neck by a wooden spear that came out of nowhere. The impact of the spear was so strong that Jaina watched in shock as the tip of the spear entered from the left and came out from the right. It almost broke the cavalry's entire neck. Looking at the tilted head and feeling the warm blood from the wound on the cavalry's neck, Jaina finally could not help but scream. Ah! The holy knight raised his shield and blocked another spear. He shouted, Orcs! This was Jaina's first Valentine's Day in her life, and it was also a bloody Valentine's Day. Chapter 674. Countless orcs suddenly jumped out of the snow outside the town. They shouted in the orc language that humans could not understand, and roared as they charged towards the Rotterdam cavalrymen that consisted of only about 60 people. Apart from the orcs, there were also many slender, white-skinned frost trolls. If not for that round of spear-throwing just now, the cavalry could have broken out of the encirclement with their warhorses. Unfortunately, at least 70% of the warhorses were pierced by the spears, and they neighed in pain in a pool of blood. The remaining cavalry had no choice but to use their warhorses as cover and form a circular formation to resist. If it was a battle on the battlefield, 100 orcs and trolls against 60 highly mobile cavalries, the outcome of the battle would still be unknown. When the cavalry was forced to become infantry, and had to use the smaller kite shields of the cavalry to form a circular formation, the outcome was decided. Jaina was sprayed with blood and she was completely stunned. Some people would scream hysterically in the face of danger. They could not do anything and would even disturb their companions, making a mess of things. Some people would show extreme survival instincts at such a moment. Like a drowning person, they would grab onto anyone they could grab and crave for a chance to survive. There were also some people who would become calm and decisive after extreme panic. There was one last type of person who could guide their companions out of a predicament that would lead them to death. The last type of person was extremely rare, and people often called them generals. It was obvious that Jaina Proudmoore was a natural commander. In just a second, Jaina came to her senses and shouted, "Go to the church. The church is made of stone." The paladin who was the leader suddenly understood what Jaina meant. Jaina's judgment was correct. If they did not have suitable defensive measures, the 60 of them would basically die in a single charge from the orcs. Hiding in the cellar was useless. Firstly, the cellar was not that big, and secondly, the orcs' demolition ability was beyond the imagination of most people. The orcs did not even need to use hammers to demolish houses made of ordinary bricks and wood. They could just knock it down with their arms. The so-called defense of a fortified position did not work on the orcs at all. The church was different. For some reason, the church in this town was made of bluestone and was rather sturdy. Go. Listen to this, lady. It would take the orcs at most half a minute to rush from the outskirts of the town to the town. They would be able to get there in a daze. Jaina's shout was definitely a life-saving move. The cavaliers of the Rotterdam kingdom supported their teammates, and almost rushed into the church in the middle of the town before the orcs surrounded them. Blarg! Jaina wanted to vomit again. The church was a sacred place for the people of Lordaeron. People would naturally come to the church to seek salvation in times of danger. Unfortunately, the orcs had turned this place into a cruel slaughterhouse. Even though the corpse was already frozen, the smell of blood that had just splashed onto Jaina's body stimulated her sense of smell. None of the cavalrymen blamed this seemingly delicate young lady because she had already saved their lives. Some of the cavalrymen dragged the injured comrades deeper into the church, while the uninjured cavalrymen quickly formed a two-layered shield formation at the entrance of the church, which could accommodate 4 people abreast and was as tall as 2 men. Thank the holy light. Thank you, wise lady. The orcs were still aggressive, but compared to setting up a formation in the middle of the town, which had a complicated terrain, the church that only needed to defend the front door was simply a holy land. There was also a side door made of bluestone that could only allow 1 human to pass through. 2 of them were enough to guard the door tightly. The orcs immediately launched an attack on the human soldiers of the church. They smashed their huge hammers over, and even with the defense of the shields, they easily broke the arm of a cavalryman. As the price, the orc died in the next moment after being stabbed by at least 7 swords of the knights. The tragic battle was going on, and the cavalrymen were constantly injured and dragged into the church by their companions. However, there were more orcs who had fallen. The cavalrymen, who were obviously veterans of the war, were extremely brave. In just 5 minutes they had killed more than 30 orcs, and only 7 of them were lightly injured while 3 of them were seriously injured. However, there were more orcs outside. The green heads were densely packed, forming a surging green ocean. It seemed that there were at least hundreds of orcs here. A cavalryman with a broken arm took out a short-barreled flintlock and fired a shot into the sky. Accompanied by an ear-piercing sound, a dazzling red signal flare soared into the sky. It could be clearly seen even 10 kilometers away. Looking at Jaina's blank expression, the cavalryman smiled. The thing sent by the Stormwind people is called a signal flare, which is specially used by our alliance to call for help. Although we don't like that damn Duque, but the thing he invented is still useful. Another cavalryman, who could no longer stand, panted and laughed. Come on, we still have to wait for the Stormwind elven women to come and save us. Elven women? Jaina did not react for a moment. The elven rangers belonging to Grand Duke Marcus of Stormwind. Although their noses are pointed at the sky, they are absolutely strong in forest battles. Our people won't be able to make it in time, so we have to see if there are any elven rangers in the vicinity. If there are no reinforcements, we won't last until nightfall. The cavalryman with a broken arm smiled bitterly. Jaina gritted her teeth. That's not necessarily true, I'm still here. You. Under the disbelieving gazes of the cavalryman, Jaina gritted her teeth, rolled up the hem of her mooncloth robe, took a step forward with her fair and tender legs, and stood on the back of the church's pew. Be careful of the troll's spears. Before the cavalryman finished speaking, he was stunned to find that there was an illusory translucent cover around Jaina. Holy light, she's actually a Sir Wizard. The cavalrymen guarding at the front also suddenly noticed the flames coming from behind them. Before they had time to turn their heads, a cold female voice sounded, "Fireball!" Asterisk bang. Asterisk with a loud sound, a huge fireball with a long tail of flames flew over the cavalryman's shield formation and exploded in the midst of the densely packed beastmen. Wow! The beastmen were clearly in an uproar. They watched in horror as several of their companions struggled in the flames and rolled on the cold ground. Some beastmen tried to help their companions put out the flames. They very professionally took off their animal skin clothes and patted them on their companions' bodies. This was useless. Before the fire weakened a little, the burning beastmen had already returned to the embrace of their ancestors. Asterisk bang. Asterisk another fireball. This time 4 or 5 beastmen were hit. Their screams in the flames terrified their companions. Chapter 675. Unknowingly the orcs began to disperse. Hooray! Praise you, great Ms. Mage. The cavalryman's morale was greatly boosted. Who would have thought that the dainty noble lady they saved would be a mage? The leader of the paladins said, "Thank you for buying more time for us." Just to buy more time? If there's only one entrance, I can guard it for 3 days and 3 nights. Feeling the terrifying magic damage and mana recovery bonus of the smoke glove, Jaina decided to use a wall of fire to resist the orcs' attack. In fact, Jaina did just that. After 5 seconds of chanting, a huge wall that was 10 meters wide and 2 meters tall appeared in front of the church. More than 20 orcs were immediately affected by the flames and turned into burning human-shaped torches. The cavalrymen cheered, but the paladins smiled bitterly. "What? Do you have a problem with my magic?" Jaina asked the leader angrily. If it were orcs from other clans, this might be enough to scare them. Unfortunately, this is the most elite warsong clan in the tribe. Almost all of the cavalrymen's bodies trembled. Even Jaina was a little familiar with the name Warsong Clan. Yes, the Warsong Clan. The Warsong Clan had made a name for themselves since South Shore. They dared to fight flamethrowers head-on, destroyed the Silverpine Forest, and even fought their way to Rotterdam. The Warsong orcs dispersed, but it didn't take long for Jaina and the others to know what they were doing. All of a sudden, there was a loud sound of glass shattering above their heads. Then there was a second sound, a third sound, dozens of times. Countless torches were thrown in, smashing the glass windows on both sides of the church, which were at least 2 people high above the ground, and landing on the ground inside the church. Because many parts of the church were already covered in frost, it did not cause a fire. It only caused chaos among the injured cavalrymen. When a few brave cavalrymen climbed to a high and narrow window to peek outside, a cavalryman almost had his head pierced by a spear. In the next moment, there was an earth-shattering sound from all directions of the church. Bang, bang, bang. The dull sound of the collision was like the knell of the Grim Reaper. The paladin cursed, "Damn it! I knew they would use the tree trunk as a battering ram." That's right, the orcs used their great strength to break the trees in the town, uprooting them and using them as siege walls. Although the church was made of blue stone, it was not a fortress. In fact, unless it was a fortress made of cement, most traditional fortresses were useless. He could only become the victim of this group of people who believed in strength creates miracles. She had clearly crashed into the walls of the church, but the sound that sounded like a landslide made Jaina feel as if the trees had directly crashed into her chest, flattening her ribs. Her lungs, which had shrunk into her lungs, could no longer expand and breathe in fresh air. Fight to the death. The Holy Knight raised his warhammer high up in the air without any hesitation. Fight to the death. Even the wounded struggled to get up and raise their weapons high up. Jaina did not expect that she would be in a desperate situation in just a few minutes. Bang, bang, bang. The orcs outside were very professional. They stopped when they were about to smash a wall. They were waiting for more breakout points to be ready. The strict management of these orcs made it hard to believe that they were just a barbarian race from a distant planet. Finally, with a rough command, more than 10 holes were blasted on both sides of the church. Every hole perfectly avoided the pillars of the church. Almost at the same time, more than 10 slender trolls jumped onto the high windows of the church, holding sharp spears in their hands. 2 long fangs were wriggling in their wide-open mouths, and they had cruel smiles on their faces. Hee hee. Loktar. Amidst the flying debris and dust, the burly orcs charged in, brandishing their huge weapons and roaring in a hoarse voice. Jaina, who was wrapped in a white barrier, was the main target. She only had time to use Flame Blast to send an orc flying, and the next moment, more than 10 spears were thrown at her. Jaina still managed to use Flash in her panic. The place where she stood half a second ago was nailed with countless spears. Half a second later she was not so lucky. The 5 spears that followed behind easily pierced through her magic barrier. Ah! Jaina finally let out a scream as if she was dying. She used her arms to protect herself in vain. Duke, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Jaina cursed before she died. At the very last moment, a miracle happened without any warning. Jaina's gloves suddenly burst out with a dazzling arcane light. Time seemed to freeze. Jaina opened her eyes, and her clear pupils were filled with shock. Roar! A fierce and majestic roar came from Jaina's gloves. The wooden spears that were thrown at her silently turned into sawdust, then into powder and disappeared in the air. Along with this inhuman roar, everyone on the battlefield, be it the orcs who raised their war hammers and the human cavalrymen who had lost their arms and were about to use their remaining arm to stab their longswords, all froze in place. At this moment, everyone felt their strength and courage escaping from their bodies with fear in their hearts. They had a premonition that something was about to descend. It was a mysterious existence with unstoppable power. When it descended, it would dominate everything and take over the entire battlefield. In the blink of an eye, everyone knew who that it was. A huge illusory magic flag made of purplish-blue arcane energy rose from Jaina's gloves. The flag was so huge that it actually surpassed the entire church and rose outside the church. The orcs and cavalrymen subconsciously raised their heads to look at the flag. Then, be it in a very non-standard common language or a thick Lordaeran accent, the orcs and cavalrymen all said the same name, Duke Marcus. As if hearing the call of the hundreds of thousands of people, a blue light suddenly lit up beside Jaina. Before everyone could react, a young man in a blue and white mage robe stood beside Jaina, who was kneeling on the ground. With one hand holding Jaina's arm, Duque laughed and said, "Ah, you still activated the last insurance on the smoke glove after all." Chapter 676. Final Insurance. Jaina's beautiful blue eyes widened. Although she wanted to pretend to be moved to tears and snot after being rescued in the end, Duke Marcus, you're a complete bastard. If she could bite Duque to death, she would definitely be willing to tear off Duque's flesh bit by bit. The current Jaina was far from the scheming and shrewd strong woman of the future, and this little lady could not help but fly into a rage. Unfortunately, her threatening actions were destined to be suppressed by Duque. That's right, she really attacked Duque. A flame blast flew towards Duque's face. If Duque was an ordinary person, Jaina's attack would definitely make Duque's mother unable to recognize him. Unfortunately, Duque was a radiant moon mage. Such a low concentration of magical elements would naturally dissipate when it came into contact with the elements around Duque's body. Jaina had indeed calculated this. Unfortunately, what she did not expect was that Duque actually retaliated. That's right. The moment before Jaina's flame blast was released, Teacher Duque actually retaliated with a magic counter, without the demeanor of a senior. The so-called magic counter was to instantly mobilize the elemental power in the atmosphere to disrupt the balance and circulation of the opponent's magic circuit. If it happened to counter the opponent's magic while they were casting, it would cause the opponent's entire magic circuit to be in a state of chaos for at least 8 seconds. This was only for mages of the same rank. Duque, a radiant moon bullying an earth mage, was simply shameless to the extreme. The magic circuit in her body instantly became chaotic, and Jaina almost fainted on the spot. Cough cough cough. The poor expired lowly choked. It was impossible for her to recover without more than a minute, and this was under the premise that she was not continuously disturbed. On the other hand, Duque's appearance undoubtedly caused an earthquake. The Lordaeran cavalry cheered thunderously. The beastmen, on the other hand, were like insects avoiding a disaster, hurriedly fleeing from the town. Run. It's that devil Duque. Even the bravest warsong beastmen lost their will to fight in the face of this storm flag that represented terror and death. Duque's flag represented a terrifying legend that could not be broken by the orcs. Duque's flag was like a haze that shrouded the entire beastman race. With Duque's storm flag, the beastmen would never be able to win. Although none of the beastmen were willing to admit this, Duque had turned these conclusions into reality every time. This time was no exception. Suddenly, a cold current spread out in a circular shape with the church as the center. The cold wind blew past and the stones on the ground seemed to tremble. They spun strangely and even followed the tiny gravel into the air. It wasn't that there was a supernatural phenomenon of anti-gravity on the ground, but that the cold air that shot up into the sky was too vast and frightening. In less than 3 seconds, the entire town with a diameter of 500 meters was covered by the cold air. The beastmen who were trying to escape took large strides, but their lower bodies were frozen in a ridiculous position, because a wave of frost had quietly frozen their lower bodies. Ah! No, ancestor! Save me! All sorts of cries sounded in the beastman language. At this moment, the Lordaeron cavalry was shocked to find that the cold air had perfectly avoided every one of them. Regardless of whether they were in Duque's sight, or whether they were close to the beastmen, only the beastmen were hit, and the cavalry less than 20 centimeters away were unharmed. Jaina's expression of shock also froze on her face. What kind of control is this? Duque raised his right hand lightly, and snapped his fingers elegantly. Snap. It sounded like the opening of the gates of hell. At least 300 illusory palms made of arcane energy suddenly appeared in the air. Magician's hand? Jaina exclaimed, seeing Duque for the first time. Every cavalier of the Rotterdam kingdom held their breath at this moment. No, the beastmen were terrified, waiting in despair for the final judgment of death. Countless arcane missiles poured down like a torrential downpour. Every high-ranked arcane missile shot by a radiant moon great wizard had the destructive power of a ballista. Under Jaina's incredulous gaze, just as the cavalry opened their mouths in shock, the beastman army that could easily drown them was easily crushed. Jaina was very reluctant to use the word crushed to describe the shocking scene before her eyes. However, it was the most suitable word. The heavy hammer that could easily smash a cavalry's kite shield turned into metal scraps after coming into contact with an arcane missile. The burly beastmen that were 2.5 meters tall were easily blown into pieces like broken puppets. Broken fangs, bulging eyeballs, rainbow-colored brain matter, innards that couldn't be described, and broken bones that were scarlet with a hint of white. If the church was a slaughterhouse of the past, then what was presented in front of Jaina now was an uncensored live broadcast of a slaughter. Blarg! Jaina had thought that she couldn't vomit anymore, but she didn't expect that when her stomach was empty, she could still vomit yellow bile. After vomiting with much difficulty, Jaina's body trembled as she finally spat out, "Duque, you bastard! Don't even think of marrying me in this life." Duque smiled as if his plan had succeeded. "Very good. Very powerful. I like what you said." Jaina almost fainted from anger at Duque. There were no beastmen left. No. There was one left. A beastman that was clearly more muscular than the others had 2 broken arms, and was kneeling in pain near the entrance of the church. The crippled beastman struggled to stand up. He glared with bloodshot eyes and roared. Unexpectedly, he spoke in the standard human language. Why? Duke Marcus, why didn't you kill me?" Jaina and all the cavalrymen looked at Duque in shock. To be able to kill hundreds and thousands of beastmen with such precision, and yet only break the arms of this beastman, it was obvious that Duque did it on purpose. Duque let go of Jaina's arm and walked to the entrance of the church with his hands behind his back. On the stairs, he raised his chin 45 degrees and looked down at the tall beastman. "Tell Grom Hellscream. Get out of the Eastern Kingdom. As long as I, Duke Marcus, am here, there will be no place for beastmen. If you really piss me off, even if I have more important things to do, I will comb through the Tirisful glades and hang every beastman." Chapter 677. His sonorous and forceful voice reverberated in the sky that had become silent once more, and it was like a blade or a sword that was engraved into the hearts of everyone. Duque could tell that the beastman was a 1,000-man commander. If it was the warsong tribe of the past that had hundreds of thousands of warriors, a 1,000-man commander would not even be in the list. Now that the tribe had been crushed and most of the remaining beastmen had fled back to the dark portal, losing 1,000 men was enough to make Grom's heart ache. It was not that Duke did not want to exterminate the Warsong Beastmen. Unfortunately, the Beastmen had found a way to deal with the Alliance, digging tunnels. Their main camp was in the future Hearth Valley, which was mostly mountainous. Then, the Warsong Beastmen who had awakened a strange talent almost hollowed out the mountain. If he faced Grom Hellscream on flat ground or in a forest, the current Duke had at least a 70% chance of killing him. With the help of the Windrunner sisters, it was 90%. In a place like the tunnels, where only the brave would win, if he did not drag corpses to revive, Duke would not even have a 20% chance of winning. The only fortunate thing was that the Beastmen were not a race that was good at self-sufficiency. Their large demand for meat meant that they had to frequently come out of the tunnels to forage for food, whether it was hunting or attacking human villages. Duke did have the ability to exterminate the Warsong Beastmen, but that would require him to mobilize at least 30,000 dwarves and 50,000 human soldiers. If he did nothing and surrounded Grom for a year and a half, the Warsong tribe would have to kneel no matter what. Unfortunately, the price was too high, and it was not in line with the interests of Stormwind City and Iron Furnace Castle. This was why Duke could let the Windrunner army continue to bleed the Warsong Beastmen, but could not exterminate the Warsong tribe. Duke knew that if he let this Beastman with 2 broken arms go back, there would be a smaller version of Kargath Bladefist. Duke did not care. As long as he could exert enough psychological pressure on the future core figure of the tribe, that was enough. As expected, the Beastman was on the verge of collapse. "Ah, bastard! Duke Marcus. One day the tribe will make you pay." The Orc Chiliarch roared like a wounded beast. "Ha ha ha ha." Duke laughed maniacally. "Your first great chieftain Black Hand is no good. Not the second great chieftain. Wait until you elect the third great chieftain to come and die. I will use your blood to tell you who the eternal nightmare of the tribe is." Ah. Duke's laughter was very arrogant and presumptuous. To the orcs, it was the laughter of a devil standing at the peak of evil. In the ears of humans, there was an indescribable sense of pride. Unknowingly, every cavalryman of the Rotterdam Kingdom straightened their backs. Even though they were injured and their broken arms were still hurting, their hearts were filled with heroism. That's right, Duke Marcus. Only such a heroic man could be called a hero of the Alliance. Only such a brave and wise man could annihilate the millions of orcs. As expected, Duke was the flag of the Alliance. Unknowingly, the eyes of the Rotterdam Kingdom's cavalrymen were filled with tears. Jaina was a little dazed. She hated this feeling. She knew that it was that bastard Duke who pushed her to this barren north. She knew very well that this town that was attacked by the tribe must have been lured here by Duke. It could be said that she was forced into danger because of Duke's scheme. A terrifying commander who could toy with millions of orcs in the palm of his hand. It would be too fake to say that he did not even think of this. And this fellow who did not look remorseful, did not seem to want to deny this. She should hate him for messing up her first Valentine's Day and her dream of a perfect 14th birthday. After thinking it through, she realized that Duke was telling her that this was the orc tribe that her father and the entire Kurtira's kingdom had been fighting for the past 2 years. This was the battlefield that her brother, Drake, had sacrificed his life for. And perhaps this was in line with one of her dreams. Duke did not seem to treat her as a political tool, nor did he treat her as a woman. Instead, he nurtured her as an important mage in the Alliance. Jaina did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, Duke was able to use Army Destroyer all by himself. Such a mighty figure caused Jaina's heart to flutter. Because at this moment, Duke and the legendary hero Duke had silently overlapped. More specific, more clear. Oh, the Orc Chiliarch left in a very manly way. He pressed his bleeding arms against one of the hammers that Jaina had just burned red. The high temperature quickly scorched his wounds and stopped the bleeding. Obviously, this was something he had learned in the Silverpine Forest that was like a fiery hell. The paladin captain who led the team came over and bowed to Duke respectfully. "Greetings, Your Excellency. I am the captain of the 3rd Garrison of Tirisful, Baron Thorad Cashin. Excuse me, are you Grand Duke Marcus?" "That's me. Thank you for your help. Without you, perhaps we would have all been wiped out." Then he glanced at Jaina, who was covered in blood. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but can I ask what's going on?" Because of a mistake in the teleportation spell, Princess Jaina Proudmoore accidentally came to Tirisful Forest. It was you who bravely protected Princess Proudmoore under the siege of 1,000 orcs until Grand Duke Marcus arrived. Brave warriors, you not only fought against the evil orcs, but also protected the beautiful princess. You did a good job and deserve a reward. Duque took out a piece of craft paper and a quill, patted it on the wall, scribbled down the general process and stamped his own seal. Take this to your commander or even to His Majesty Menethil. You will be rewarded. Lordairans and Kultiras. And this is my small private reward. Duque took out a bag of gold coins for the paladin and a pair of paladin gloves made by the dwarves of Ironstove Castle. Cashin and his men were immediately moved. Jaina. The little princess of Kultiras was so angry that her teeth itched. It was Duque who had deliberately dug a pit for her to jump in, and even included the cavalry in the pit. They had worked for you, but you made it seem as if Jaina's spell mistake had caused them to suffer heavy losses. But as smart as she was, of course, she would not expose Duque on the spot. After politely thanking him, she teleported back to Karazhan with Duke, even quieter than a well-behaved wife. Chapter 678. After Duke and Jaina went out, in Karazhan, Jaina's maids and attendants were all discussing it in private. The soul of gossip that had existed since ancient times was burning. Do you think that the Grand Duke and Her Highness will do that? Definitely. No one can resist Her Highness's charm. Now that Her Highness is the only princess left in the world, any normal man would know what to do. I still don't think they will go straight to home plate. That's hard to say. Isn't the Lake of Wind in the East Elven Forest beautiful? What if the scenery is too beautiful? Yeah. Back then, I was mesmerized by the scenery of the sea, and then I lost my chastity to that bastard Anthony. Hey. I heard that His Majesty Proudmoore and Miss Goldensword also had sex on the ship back then. Sylvanas, who was not far away, sneered when she heard this. She turned around and teased Elugia. Yo, little Elugia, aren't you afraid that Duque will act impulsively and let little Jaina come ashore first? Elugia shook her head firmly. Sister Sylvanas, you also know about Duque's plan. I'm just afraid that Duque will go too far and not know how to keep it. Queen Sylvanas smirked. That's not necessarily true. Our Duque is so popular. Besides, that playboy, didn't he hide a real princess before? Elugia raised her index finger in front of her lips and nervously made a shushing gesture. They are not elves who can hear the whispers of the wind. Queen Sylvanas shrugged indifferently. I really don't know what's so good about Duque. Eldest and third sister are like this, and so are you. Everyone is dead set on that kid. Elugia's pretty face turned red. Hey, do you want to make a bet with me? Let's bet on whether Duque will do anything to little Jaina. Let's bet. Elugia agreed a little angrily. What's the bet? Sylvanas asked with a hint of mockery. Let's bet on him doing something within his power. All right. Just as the two of them made their vows, Elugia felt an arcane wave coming from the other side. All of Karazhan was in a state of strict spatial lockdown, especially from the direction of Azeroth. With Duque and Khadgar's efforts, most of the spatial rifts had been moved to the original location of the Knight's Nightmare. It was now guarded by the Einherjar, the Saintess of Chastity, and the giant arcane constructs led by the Curator. The stables, parlor, and ballroom at the main entrance had been refurbished. Even the opera house would be reopened soon. This arcane wave was a portal that could lead directly to the front door. Only Duque and Elugia had the authority to open it. Duque returned with Jaina. Gianna's appearance caused all of Kultiras's maids and servants to cry out in alarm. Your Highness, what's wrong? Jaina's head made rushed up in panic, and she glanced suspiciously at Duque. It's not my blood. I'm fine. Jaina, who had calmed down, quickly got to the point. I went through a cruel magic trial, and now I just want to take a good bath. Even though Jaina comforted the maids, her appearance was too horrifying. Her entire upper body was dyed red with blood, as if she had fallen into a pool of blood for an evil ritual and was then fished out. At this moment, even though no one said anything due to Duque's authority, every Kultiras citizen felt a deep resentment towards Duque. What happened to the romance that was promised? What happened to the wonderful Valentine's Day? It's fine if you don't want to date our precious princess, but you even got yourself covered in blood. What the hell is this? Duque ignored the murderous gazes of the maids and shrugged. On the other side, Sylvanas, who came up to greet him, had a slightly pretentious expression of surprise. Is it that bad? Elugia and Khadgar nodded at the same time. Before Jaina could go far, one of the maids beside her had already vomited, because the maids had seen the pieces of internal organs stuck to the back of Jaina's shoulder. Elugia gave Duque a ladle-like bow. Seems like it's more suitable for me to go. Although Elugia looked gentle and weak, she had fought thousands of miles with Duque in the past, and had seen even the most tragic of battlefields. She was 100 times better than the maids who had never seen blood. Elucia, this is my loss. Servanas was very straightforward. Elucia waved her hand as she left, indicating that she had heard him. In the hall, only Duque and Servanas were left. Yo, Duque, you really don't regret what you did? Regret what? His Majesty Dalin handed his daughter over to an archmage who killed the most orcs in the Alliance as a disciple. He should have been mentally prepared for this. Duque looked indifferent. You're really willing to be so cruel to such a delicate little girl? Queen Sylvie put her hands on her hips in surprise. Is this still the Duke Marcus who used to be obsessed with beautiful women, who gave magic roses everywhere and used magic to please girls? Duque blushed. Alright, stop teasing me. Times have changed. Maybe there will be 2 to 5 years of peace, but the symphony of destruction has already begun. First, Jaina does have the talent to be a hero. Second, the one who can stand by my side in the end must be a powerful woman who can protect herself in any crisis. Servanas was not stupid. She immediately realized that she was in Duque's hunting range. Bastard. Do you want to kill all 4 of us Windrunner sisters? Do you want to die? I'll say this first, I don't like you. Don't flatter yourself. Duque touched his nose awkwardly. I didn't say that. That's good. Servanas turned around, showing the back of Duke's head, and left without saying anything. On the other side, in the bathroom of Karazhan, Jaina could not count on the maid. She could only ask her best friend and spy Duque sent, Elucia, to wash her body. She washed her body with warm water over and over again, but no matter how she washed, she could still feel the disgusting smell of blood in her nostrils. Human, orc, the cavalryman whose neck was pierced by a spear, the warriors who died in front of her, the orcs who were smashed into pieces by Duque's magic, everything that happened today uncontrollably replayed in her mind. Jaina shrunk her body and put half her face in the water. She blew bubbles out of boredom. Poof 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 poof. The next moment, an illusion appeared in Jaina's vision. She was not soaking in clean water but in a pool of blood. Wretch. Jaina hurriedly got up and vomited again. Chapter 679. Are you all right? Elucia patted Jaina's back lightly. Maybe I wasn't used to it at first. When I saw the battlefield for the first time, my reaction was similar to yours. I went back and threw up for 2 days. Damn it. Duque ruined my Valentine's Day and my birthday. Jaina looked like she wanted to eat Duque alive. I'll remember him for the rest of my life. Elucia could only shrug helplessly. She could not speak up for Duque. Of all the days he had to pick a time like this. Wasn't this just torturing people? Elucia sighed. Yes. Little Jaina, it'd be best if you could beat him up with magic in the future. He's really despicable sometimes. Jaina was very smart. She could tell from a few words that Elucia was still on Duque's side. She had an indescribably strange feeling. Was this her best friend who was likely to snatch her man? Jaina decided to wait and see. Here, tell me more about Duque. Why are you starting to give in to him? No, to conquer an enemy one must first fully understand him. All right. So she had already become an enemy. Duque, don't blame me for selling you out. Of course, I don't believe that Jaina at this level can handle you. At this moment, in the master bedroom on the highest floor of Karazhan, Duque had returned with Aurelia and Sasha. Sylvanas continued to command the Windrunners Rangers in place of them. Sasha rushed over like a bird returning to its nest and gave Duque a kiss. Duque, I'm so happy. When you made this Valentine's Day, I almost thought you were going to make a festival in Stormwind just for Jaina's arrival. Aurelia took off her white coat and laughed. If this is also Valentine's Day, then this must be a bloody Valentine's Day. Sasha tacitly stepped aside to let her elder sister and Duke hug each other. After a round of exchanging words and tongues, Duque brought the 2 sisters to the table that had already been prepared. The nobles basically didn't talk during the meal, and even if they did, they would do so in whispers. But at Duque's place they didn't have to worry so much. They continued to chat as they ate. Speaking of which, do you really like Jaina's talent that much? Aurelia had always been curious. She didn't understand why Duque was willing to nurture Jaina with all his might, even though he clearly rejected Jaina personally. Duque cut off a small piece of steak and swallowed it. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and said, First of all, her magic talent is top-notch. She's the same as Ronan, a Breaking Dawn great wizard. From Duque's mouth, this evaluation could not be said to be low. The Windrunner sisters froze. Then, given her identity as a princess, she'll be able to do a lot of things if there are any major changes in the Rotterdam kingdom in the future. But she had a very special characteristic, and that was that she was too rational. She was used to weighing the value of everything on both ends of the scale. This could be a good thing or a bad thing. In a bad situation she could be the next great trader, Piranad. After hearing this, Aurelia couldn't eat any more. Then, it doesn't matter. That's why I gave her a strong dose of medicine. Regarding Jaina, Duque had actually thought for a long time. If it was according to the original history of Jaina, Duque would definitely kill her with a stick. Damn it, the so-called alliance with the tribe against the evil forces, this was equivalent to selling Dad, who didn't see the big picture and destroyed the cooperation between the tribe and the alliance, to Rexer and Thrall. When Dad died he would come out and shed a few drops of tears. Looking at the original history, apart from that time when Mount Hyjal resisted the Arc-Herons, Jaina mostly flirted with the tribe when she shouldn't have. When she really had to ally with the tribe, Theramore, her life's work, was flattened by the great chief Braindead Roar, with a nuclear-level magic bomb, focusing Rainbow, causing her to lose her mind. At the end of the day it was because Jaina was too smart and too rational most of the time, forgetting that human society was ultimately maintained by human emotions. Duque's strong medicine was the brutality of the orcs. In the original timeline Jaina was younger than she was now. Jaina, who hadn't experienced the war at the Dark Portal, had grown up in the Dalajan, the sealed holy land of magicians. She hadn't seen the brutality of the orcs, so when she first came out after growing up, she felt more sympathy for the orcs who were enslaved by humans. She felt that the orcs were the victims, and she couldn't understand the hatred and bigotry of her father, Dylin, towards the orcs. Now, Duque had taught her a very important lesson in advance. Talent could be cultivated. But heroes couldn't be replicated. What? It was simple. All education could be repeated, but life experience couldn't be repeated. Even if it was the same trial, exploring an unknown dungeon for the first time and sending people to harvest after the exploration were two completely different levels of tests. Originally, Jaina had been too successful. She had been raised like a Virgin Mary in a greenhouse. Now that Duque told her, this world is cruel and if you can't take it, go back and be a greenhouse princess, it would obviously change the course of Jaina's life. That night, when Duque fought with the Windrunner sisters, King Dylin of Kull Tiras received the news. Reading the magic message that was more than 1,000 words long, Dylin was stunned for a long time. His lover, Jaina Kingsword, placed her hands on his shoulders and massaged his shoulders. After Dylin's queen passed away, she was the actual queen. However, she had never tried to stand in front of the throne, nor did she try to make her and Dylin's illegitimate daughter officially join the royal family. She was satisfied with her current position, and she didn't want to cause any trouble for Dylin. Therefore Dylin trusted her very much. Duque really dared to do it. Dylin was conflicted. He didn't know if he should be angry or laugh. He's been rejecting me since the beginning. His attitude hasn't changed at all, Jaina reminded Dylin. I thought he was never a real politician. If he was the kind of man who constantly compromised for political victory, he wouldn't have become the Alliance's hero. Isn't that right? Bastard, I want him to be my son-in-law. Jaina laughed. Now he's just fulfilling his responsibility as a teacher. Even if you make a scene in the Alliance, no one will support you. Don't forget, you gave him your sword and asked him to fulfill his responsibility as a teacher. Dylin felt like he had shot himself in the foot. Bastard. I'll teach him a lesson one day. Chapter 680. The third year of the Dark Portal was a relatively peaceful year for the Alliance. Duque continued to teach Jaina viciously. No, he taught her with all his heart. He used a completely different teaching method from the Dalajan mages. In terms of personality building, Duque would bring Jaina to the Tirisful Forest to wipe out the orcs, or to the Swamp of Sorrows to clean up the orcs and various swamp creatures there. Under Duque's torment, the once beautiful princess would often leave the house clean in the morning and come back at night looking like a girl made of mud. Kull Tiras' chief maids and female officers had sent letters of complaint to their countries at first, but they soon realized that even after they had been confirmed and presented to King Dylin, they were still like rocks in the ocean. They also realized that their king had tacitly agreed to all of this. In the field of magic, Duque's teaching method was more like a free-range one. After the system scan, Duque told Jaina that she could learn any type of book in any region. If she couldn't find a book, she could ask a ghost. Oh, ask Khadgar. The bored Khadgar would read magic books every day because he had nothing to do, so he was more proficient than Duque. Of course, Duque always had a way to show off his existence and value. Every time Jaina cultivated a new spell, Duque would always be able to see where Jaina's problem was at a glance, as well as the metamagic abilities on how to cultivate that spell. After a while, no matter how unconvinced Jaina was, she had to admit that this teacher, who was only 4 years older than her, was indeed qualified to teach her. It was now May of the 3rd year of the Dark Portal. It was the end of spring and the beginning of summer, and the cement road that traversed the entire elven forest from east to west was basically completed. With Duque providing the technology and the dwarves doing the work, the railway project that employed a large number of Stormwind workers had officially begun. At the same time, the equally grand reconstruction of Stormwind City was underway. Clan had once doubted whether it was reliable for a country as weak as Storm Kingdom to carry out 2 projects that cost a lot of money and resources at the same time. In terms of money alone, it had cost more than 10 million gold coins. No one could calculate the amount of money needed for the various small projects. Duque replied, "If someone else were to do it, it would be suicide. However, I'm a once-in-a-thousand-year internal affairs genius in Azeroth, so leave it to me." Duque's words were very arrogant, and the ministers were not convinced at first. It had to be said that it was too easy for a university student who knew a little about the market economy to transmigrate to this medieval world. Blindly giving out alms such as disaster relief food and clothing did prevent the worst situation of people starving to death in the beginning. But if he did it too often and for too long, it would produce another result. It was easy to raise lazy people. It wasn't that there weren't any holy people in the world. It was precisely because there were too many mediocre people that people yearned to be saints. On the other hand, if all the people in the world were to live like ascetics, 99% of them would not want it. Duque's approach was to use work as a form of relief. The first step was to make an announcement and directly tell the people that the country had just been destroyed and that the country had no money. In order to let everyone tide over the difficulties and not starve to death, the country had handed over all its savings. A lot of money and supplies were borrowed. It wasn't a simple announcement, but the mayor, village chief, and civil officials everywhere rushed to the people to publicize it almost every day. The second step was to implement the IOU system. The kingdom didn't have that many gold coins in circulation. Fine. I owe you. Duque used 3 days to set up a complete IOU system. Those who took the country's disaster relief food in the winter would write an IOU based on the quantity and quality. Those who took cotton-padded clothes would also owe. Those who obtained a new house would owe even more. This was all owed to the kingdom. Then spring came and it was time to start paying off the debt. When the farming was over, they would have to work for the country according to their own abilities. How much would it cost to build the railway in a day? How much would it cost to join the patrol team? After a while, the people discovered, hey, working for the country to pay off the debt, in the end, they could still get a few more IOU every day, which could be used to exchange for necessary food and daily necessities. The IOU that Duque made couldn't be counterfeited because it was a magic item made by the magic apprentices he recruited. The cost of making the IOU itself far exceeded the value of the IOU itself. As a result, a complete internal circular economic system controlled by the planned economy was formed. It started operating in March for 2 months. When Lang cautiously came to Duque to ask how much the country owed, Duque directly gave him a deficit of 0. Oh no, it was a lot of surplus. Lang and the ministers of the interior were dumbfounded. Lang was already mentally prepared to sell the land and the state's assets so that the people could live a good life. Anyway, most of the nobles had been wiped out before, and their fiefs had fallen back into the hands of the Rin family. It was still possible to live by selling the land. Now, Duque actually told him that not only did he not suffer a loss, but he also made a huge profit. Lang didn't understand. The ministers of the interior didn't understand either. Duque shook his head as he explained. Let me tell you, IOU is actually gold coins. It's just that I took advantage of everyone's gratitude and secretly lowered their wages. Then I created a market environment where gold coins can't buy things, but IOU can. This caused everyone to unknowingly do a lot more work for the kingdom. Now, we don't need to spend money to feed the people and we don't need to spend money to rebuild. But we still receive the gold coins from the countries of the Alliance. That's the money for building the watchtower. However, a very important part of the initial investment was to build this railway across the Elven Forest. I used this to invigorate the market economy of Stormwind. In addition, because of the smooth transportation, the specialties of the various regions of Stormwind have also begun to be collected by the kingdom. The kingdom will sell them directly to the maritime merchants of Kull, Tiras, and convert them into foreign exchange. So in the latest March and April, the kingdom has a monthly surplus of about 1.2 million gold coins. After Duque finished calculating the accounts, Lang and the ministers of the interior were all on their knees. Unfortunately, due to cultural differences, otherwise they would all write the word convinced to Duque. Duque smiled and looked into the southeast. His gaze seemed to pass through space and fell on the door of darkness thousands of miles away. Sorry, tribe. Our alliance has revived ahead of schedule. What about your tribe? The tribe on the other side of the door of darkness, very bad. At the end of last year, when Kilrog Deadeye's Blood Ring clan and Kargath Bladefist's Shatterhand clan returned to Draenor, they faced a world that was completely out of control. The tribe that had lost its chief once again returned to the chaotic state of the clans. Almost for the entire winter, the clans were fighting each other. Chapter 681. In the First and Second War of the Dark Portal, the Horde was arrogant and seemed to have an endless number of troops. It was largely because of the worsening natural environment of Draenor. The reason why Dan was able to lure so many beastmen to their deaths was very simple. Since they were all fighting and killing each other, rather than letting so many fierce beastman tribes fight each other for a smaller and smaller piece of cake, it was better for everyone to go to another planet and fight for a bigger piece of cake. However, with the defeat of the Horde and the fall of the strongest clans in Azeroth, the lack of resources in Draenor seemed to have become less scarce. The Blackrock clan, which was originally the #1 clan, claimed to have 500,000 warriors at their peak. Of course, this was an exaggeration, but there were definitely 300,000 adult orc warriors, and most of them were absolute elites who had experienced the war with the Draenei. Unfortunately, they were weakened by Duque's many tricks, and even the last seed was lost in the sea in the southeast of the Lordaeron continent. The only remaining clan was the Blacktooth clan, which was split from Blackhand's two sons, Rend Blackhand and Maim Blackhand. After chasing after Dan, they directly left Orgrim's control. It could be said that the absence of the Blackrock clan had freed up the living space of at least 3 first-rate clans for the entire Horde. Then there was the Warsong clan, which was second only to the Blackrock clan. Unlike the original history, the Warsong clan was thrown into Azeroth early in this war. Now, after Southshore and Silverpine Forest suffered a series of heavy losses, the entire clan was trapped in the Tirisful Glades. Then there was the Frostwolf clan, which was also one of the first-rate clans. They were not much different from the original history, and were directly banished to the Alterac Mountains before the official start of the First War of the Dark Portal. Then there was the Storm Predators and the Blackscar clan, which were at the bottom of the first-rate clans. Finally, there was the Blood Ring clan, the Shattered Palm clan, and the Dragonmaw clan. These were the 3 first-rate clans that suffered heavy losses, but still returned to Draenor. Unfortunately, due to the significant decline in population and warriors, they had become second-rate clans. All in all, the first-rate clans had nearly 1 million people empty, and this did not include the losses of the second-rate and third-rate clans. If the orc laborers, who had always been ignored by the chiefs, were included. In the 2 wars of the Dark Portal, the Horde had lost more than 2 million people. If anyone checked carefully, they would find that more than 1/3 of the warriors had drowned in the sea. The Alliance had to give Duque a thumbs up. In the tribe, population and warriors were synonymous with territory. Without population and warriors, there would be no territory. There were more vacancies than in history, which led to a new round of reshuffling of power. When Orgrim was still around, none of the clans that stayed in Draenor dared to make a move even though they knew that the chief was still alive. The Orgrim captured and the clans of the Wolf Clan, of Dragon Clan and Wolf Clan. For example, the White Claw clan was exterminated because they sympathized with Durotan and the Frostwolf clan's misfortune. The Thor, Thunderblade, Mockingskull, Crimson Walker and Chuban Eater, who had stayed in Draenor for various reasons and had yet to be sent to Azeroth, gained the greatest advantage in this shuffle. Before winter they had more than doubled their territory. If it wasn't for the cold of winter, and if they had a little foresight, they might have been able to make Kilrog Deadeye and Kargath Bladefist suffer a grievance. While Draenor was busy fighting on the eastern kingdoms of Azeroth, the revival of the countries continued. Obviously, the revival of the southern continent was faster than that of the Lordaeron continent. In the north, whether it was the Silverpine Forest that had been burned to the ground or the Warsong orcs in the Tirisful woodlands, Tyrannus could not do anything. He could only hope for the harvest of the fields near Stratholme this year. After all, it was away from the forest, and the orcs would not dare to come out and face the knights of Lordaeron. Barnil, Felstone and Maris, these famous grain-producing areas were Lordaeron's last hope. He even hoped that if Deathwing became the king of Alterac, at least Alterac's 10,000 acres of fertile land in Hillsbrad could be temporarily given to Lordaeron. The nearby Dalagen and Stormguard were finally on the right track. But no one could compare to the prosperity of the south. Even if Tyrrhenas did not want to admit it, he had to admit that there was no other genius in the world like Duque, who could create an independent economic system out of thin air and revive the whole kingdom without spending a single gold coin. Hell, if Kalia was here, I would marry Kalia to Duque even if it was embarrassing. The only good thing is, Dalen didn't seem to benefit from it. Tyrrhenas had thought of imprisoning Kalia for life because she had embarrassed the Menethil royal family. But when there was a greater benefit, Tyrrhenas hoped that his dead daughter would crawl out of her grave so that he could sell her again. This was the despicable politics of the royal family. When everyone's attention was on Stormwind, one day in mid-May, Antonidas suddenly received a request for a meeting from Duque. It was not an urgent request, but one that went through diplomatic procedures. The former Dalagen mage, Lady Ilucia Barov, personally submitted it to the Foreign Affairs Department of the Kirin Tor Parliament. Even though Antonidas was obsessed with magic experiments, he still received Duque the next day. "Oh, my dear Duque, I thought you had the blood of dwarves in your veins. Railways? Trains? Looks like you're better at dealing with dwarves than you are at being a mage. Alright, what brings you here?" Antonidas hugged Duque with a hint of dissatisfaction and a hint of mockery. "I'm so happy to see you in such good health, Master Antonidas," Duque said politely, then went straight to the point. "Actually, I came this time because I received some unconfirmed news. But this news is too important, so I had to come personally." "What kind of news?" Antonidas pondered. He knew Duque very well. Even though this young man's plans seemed wild and unconstrained, he had never failed before. From the war with the Horde to the victory ceremony of Lordaeron with the 4 Dragon Kings. Duque's actions always had an obvious purpose. If you ignored his actions, you would be tricked like Tyrrhenas, and don't blame him for not informing you in advance. The warlock King Ghoul, Dan's master, Nazul, has his eyes on the Dalagen Eye. Chapter 682. The Dalagen's Eye was a super arcane magic artifact, the treasure of the Dalagen. Suddenly hearing this name, even someone as mature and steady as Antonidas could not remain calm. It was no secret that the Dalagen possessed the Dalagen's Eye, but the news of an evil super warlock coveting the Dalagen's Eye made the Kirin Tor Council president feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. "Duque, this news is not funny. Where did you get this news? What does the Horde want the Dalagen's Eye for?" Facing the serious Antonidas, Duque explained, "I found the Book of Mediv in the library of Karazhan." "Mediv?" Antonidas whispered, feeling his stomach begin to twitch slightly. "The Book of Mediv? The world's greatest wizard, the one who helped the orcs open the first dark portal, his magic book? That book contained the secrets of magic that all mages yearned for. Was it in Duque's hands now?" Antonidas had an indescribable envy. Although he was only one step away from becoming a demigod as a Breaking Dawn wizard, if there were no accidents, this step would become a chasm that he would never be able to cross. If he had the Book of Mediv, he might have a chance. But he knew that Duque, as the successor of the Mediv, would not even lend him the book to read. On the other side, Duque found the Book of Divine Artifacts. It did not take him much effort to find it in the middle of the Mediva's study, on the day that Duque cleared the last hostile boss in Karazhan. As if a switch had been flipped, this Book of Divine Artifacts, that recorded most of the powerful magic of the Mediv, appeared on the bookshelf in front of Duque. It was a huge and thick book. Its red cover was lined with brass, and there was a coat of arms with a flying crow on it. Unfortunately, Duque could only read a very small portion of the pages. The rest of the pages were all sealed by powerful magic. The system indicated that it could only be opened after becoming a Breaking Dawn wizard. Now, what Duque showed Antonidas was an illusion of one of the pages. On the page there was a drawing that looked exactly like the Door of Darkness in the Cursed Land. However, this door wasn't in the Cursed Land. Looking at the drawing of the surroundings, it seemed to be in an unknown world. "This is, according to the demonic language that I deciphered, there are 2 dark doors. One is in Azeroth and the other is in Draenor, where the orcs are. They correspond to each other. Although you and I once worked together to close the dark portal, we only closed the portal itself. When we first created the dark portal, we didn't fill in the gap in the spatial barrier of Azeroth." Antonidas stroked his long white beard as he digested Duque's words. "Continue." Duque pointed at the illusory page in his hand. If anyone can obtain the perfect structure of the Dark Portal and the coordinates of Azeroth from the Book of Medivh, if there is a powerful force that can reactivate the Dark Portal, such as the Dalajan's Eye, if there is a controller, Antonidas continued, then the reopening of the Dark Portal is no longer just an illusion. Duke came to a conclusion on this matter. About that controller, do you have any clues? The Kirin Tor Chancellor frowned. Yes. The scepter that Ghoul, Dan used, Sargeras' scepter. According to the Orc captives, Ghoul, Dan led his clan to abandon their tribe and went to the tomb of Sargeras in the Endless Sea, hoping to obtain the power of the fallen titan from Sargeras' corpse. Obviously he failed. The Orc captives said that Ghoul, Dan was drowned by the demons that escaped from the tomb. The tomb of Sargeras. Just hearing about it gave him a headache. If it was during peaceful times, Antonidas would definitely not mind summoning a group of bored mages to explore. After all, they were Dalajan mages. If they didn't die in an explosion in the laboratory, they would die in all sorts of suicidal incidents. Only 1 out of 100 would have a good ending. What's the attitude of the Dragon Slumber Shrine? It seems like the dragons are temporarily unable to enter. However, Alexstrasza promised to send a small team to monitor the area and kill any demons that come out. Antonidas sighed. It seems like we don't have any good ideas in the short term. Yes. I'm also here to remind you to take good care of the Dalajan's Eye. In my opinion, as long as the 3 artifacts do not fall into the hands of Nazul, the Alliance will not be in greater danger. At least we won't have to face the 3rd war of the Dark Portal for the time being. Well, thank you for your notice. I will immediately convene a meeting of the Kirin Tor Council to discuss this matter and strengthen the level of protection for the Dalajan's Eye. Duque followed up with a few words and left. Through the portal, Duque returned to Karazhan and saw Aurelia, who had returned to rest. Without saying anything, Duque directly embraced this noble and wild female elf into his arms. Duque, what's wrong today? The female elf sensed that the atmosphere was not right. After a few seconds of silence, Duque suddenly said, Aurelia, do you believe in fate? Aurelia's brilliant golden hair seemed to be shining, and her sexy red lips curved into a smile from the bottom of her heart. I do. If there was no guidance from fate, how could I possibly fall hopelessly in love with a human child like you? Then, do you believe that fate can be changed? Leaning her head on Duque's shoulder, Aurelia enjoyed this quiet embrace, gently using her chest to feel Duque's powerful heartbeat. 2 years ago, when Stormwind City fell, didn't many people also believe that in the face of a powerful tribe, destruction was the only fate of humans? Then, who led them to launch a counterattack and finally to victory? Duque smiled. Yes, there was nothing to be afraid of. According to the original history, Aurelia would have joined the Alliance Expeditionary Force to counterattack Draenor, and then completely disappeared in that terrible big explosion, and was regarded as dead by the Alliance. But so what? I have already changed the fate of too many people. Lang, Lillis, Lothar, these important figures who had sacrificed themselves heroically in history were still alive and kicking at this moment. Lang was teaching the little Prince Varian. Lillis was still happily traveling the world. Anduin had just won the arm wrestling competition in the army. The only one who died before the notification seemed to be Nesario. What else do I have to be afraid of? Chapter 683. The reason why conspiracies were terrifying was that they were hidden under all appearances. The cheating behavior of a transmigrator knowing the plot was, in fact, an unreasonable act of penetrating the fog and reaching the essence. Now, the only thing that Duque could not be sure of was another thing. Why did the robbery team sent by Nazul succeed so easily and snatch the 3 artifacts? One of the most important reasons was that the Wings of Death, Nesario, had intervened. With the help of the former dragon aspects, the Eye of the Dalajan, which was stored in the most tightly guarded treasure vault of the Dalajan, was no different from an exhibit in a glass window. The problem was, Nesario had already been killed by Duque. If the theft of the 3 artifacts had failed, the door of darkness would not have been completely opened again, and there would have been no expeditionary army, and there would have been no Draenor explosion. This is awesome. Just thinking about it makes me feel good. I don't have to work so hard anymore. Duque hugged Aurelia tightly. It was a feeling of wanting to rub his lover into his body and become one with him. Smelling the fragrance floating between the golden hair, Duque swore to himself, "Come on, Nazul. I don't care if you're the first orc shaman or the powerful Lich King. I've already dug a big hole for you. Let's see when you jump into the hole." Strategies were especially effective when one's strength was insufficient and one had to fight the strong with the weak. When one's strength was strong enough to defeat the enemy, then it would be meaningless for the enemy to play any tricks. In the 3 years of the Door of Darkness, the whole year was spent in the midst of the kingdom's reconstruction. In May, Stormwind announced the implementation of compulsory military service. Every adult man over the age of 16 must undergo 3 months of military training. In addition, women who mastered the skill of the javelin would receive additional rewards. In June, the steam crane jointly improved by Duque and the dwarves was introduced to the reconstruction site of Stormwind City. The reconstruction work was greatly accelerated. At the same time, the Alliance built the watchtower in the Cursed Land. In July, the Stormwind engineering team, under the cover of Duke Marcus' private corps, paved a cement road to the Reedridge Mountain in one go, reaching the entrance to the Swamp of Sorrows. In the same month, a large number of Murlocs and Nagas entered the swamp and fought fiercely with the swamp creatures and the orcs wandering in the swamp area. The supply route to the Alliance's barracks in the Cursed Land became smoother. In August, because the first batch of summer grain in the western wilderness had a good harvest, a large amount of grain was transported to various parts of the Elven Forest through cement roads, quelling a possible food shortage. At the end of September, the Elven Forest had a bountiful harvest, and the whole country rejoiced. In October, the construction of the cement road that connected the entire Swamp of Sorrows from the north to the south was completed, and many sentry towers were built along the road. In November, before winter completely set in, the double-track railway that traversed the entire Elven Forest was completed. This meant that the triangular junction area from Stormwind City to the Reedridge Mountains could now be reached in 2 days. Trains that used early steam engines could now pull 4 carriages at a time, transporting nearly 1,000 soldiers to the Red Ridge Mountain quickly. It was said that a newer type of steam engine was already being developed. In December, the Southern Continent Defense Command was established in the Reedridge Mountains, with Anduin Lothar as the commander-in-chief, and Turalian as the commander of the Overwatch stronghold in the Cursed Land. While the Alliance was vigorously rebuilding and preparing for the upcoming war, what were the Horde doing? The Horde was still fighting. A spiked battle-axe modified from a giant beast's lower jaw was brandished by its owner, its speed and power so astonishing that when it struck its target, it already released a sharp whistling sound in the air. Under the winter sun, dozens of pillars of blood spurted out from the neck of the orc powerhouse that was struck, emitting a fierce radiance. The owner of the axe laughed maniacally, opening his lower jaw that was covered in green tattoos to an almost impossible width. As he moved, his long black hair fluttered behind his head, and his blind left eye emitted an indescribable red evil light. His remaining eye kept turning, following his axe as it chopped at the enemies that dared to stand in his way. Wait. Too weak. Too weak. Scum like you can't even win against humans, and yet you dare to come to my Bloodring tribe's territory to die? Kilrog Deadeye roared. He continued to swing his axe, beheading his fellow orcs from different tribes as if he was cutting meat. Victory was undeniable. However, Kilrog felt a sense of emptiness. The enemy in front of him was too weak. Compared to the human holy knights he had fought before, it was like the difference between a wild boar and a giant dragon. His exquisite skills and great strength were rendered useless. Kilrog. Kilrog heard someone call his name and snorted. He turned around, forcing himself not to be immersed in the desire for a bloody battle. Kargith? It was Kargith Bladefist. Barging in while 2 tribes were engaged in a fierce battle was not a rational thing to do. If he was not careful, he would provoke both sides to attack him. He did not care. Because he was Kargith Bladefist. Strolling on the battlefield, Kargith was practically taking a leisurely stroll. If any blind orc pounced at him, he would use his severed arm's serrated evil blade to send that guy to reincarnation. The battle was actually coming to an end. This small tribe that had gone mad from hunger had foolishly barged into the territory of the Bloodring tribe, which seemed to have fewer people. From the start, they were destined to have a tragic ending. They did not chase after this small tribe as Kilrog's subordinates would do it themselves. Kilrog carried his serrated battle axe as he walked towards Kargith. Even though he had just been engaged in intense activity, he was now only lightly panting. He raised his head to look at Kargith. No matter how many times he had seen Kargith, the evil blade on his severed arm would always leave a deep impression on him. Old friend. Kilrog waited for the leader of the Shattered Palm tribe to walk to his side. They held each other's hands tightly. Of course it was the right hand. Kilrog did not want to hold his opponent's blade. Looks like your tribe hasn't recovered yet. You should learn from my tribe. Kargith revealed a rough and cruel smile. Kilrog rolled his only remaining eye. You bastard, do you think anyone can learn from your shattered palm tribe? Directly cutting off an arm and equipping it with a blade is equivalent to joining the tribe. Thanks to this cruel yet simple and effective action, the shattered palm tribe's population rapidly expanded. The Blood Ring tribe will rise again. However, have you had enough of this boring internal strife? Yes. If it wasn't for Ghoul, Dan, we would have won long ago. That you're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.